morning to all of you who are viewing this video today. Since now you understand the situation prevailing not only in our country but all over the world because of the virus effect, where we are all been locked down, and it has come to a shelter-in-place or stay-at-home situation. Unfortunately, we decided to carry on with our lecture program at least for a few weeks time through video presentation. only problem I can see is that there's no interaction between you guys and the lecturer, but we'll make sure that we deliver our lectures absolutely leaving no doubts for you, for the time being at least. The few lessons we will cover in that basis, and as you all return, hopefully very soon, we will take another quick revision on all lessons that we cover through video, just to clarify issues you may have. Today we are going to run through an accounting standard, LKS number 37. This covers mainly three items: provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. The major part of this standard is provisions. Contingent liabilities and contingent assets are being dealt in this standard, but not to a great extent, in the sense they are not the serious items. The standard has taken very mild, write up on contingent liabilities and contingent assets. But when it comes to provisions, provisions are dealt greater in detail compared to the other two items. So this standard deals with three aspects on these three items. One, the first thing is recognition. Then the second aspect is measurement. And the third aspect is disclosure. So for example, if you take provisions, they talk about provisions under three headings, under three aspects: how to recognize a provision, and how to measure a provisioning amount, and what to disclose with regards to the provisions that you make in the financial statements. Now, as it comes to provisions, our, general thinking about provision is for anything to be conservative in the financial statements, we got to make a provision. So that line of thinking had been, developing over a longer period of time. People think that, in order to be prudent, you must make provisions at all times, whenever that is possible. But that thinking is pretty much wrong, because you cannot make any provisions in a situation when it is not needed. People have this thinking, as I told you, if you don't make a provision, it's a big crime. That means you are overstating your profit. You are manipulating your financial statements. All sorts of accusations will come through. They think that if you don't make a provision, that's a crime. Similarly, I must tell you, if you make a provision when it is not required to, when it is not supposed to, that is also an equal crime. Which means you recommend for a provision in the accounts when it is not required. So that's why this standard is very important for us to understand when the provisions should be made and when they are not supposed to be made. Now, as we come to the note, I am on page number 11 of LKS number 37 of our material that I have already provided to you. This material contains two standards. First one is SLFRS 5, and that goes from page number 1 to 10. Now we are on page number 11, LKS number 37. This standard does not apply to few items. Those resulting from financial instruments. Any provisioning or contingent assets or contingent liability, any of these items arising from financial instruments are not supposed to be covered by this standard, because when the financial instruments are put on at fair value, that fair value assessment takes into account of these contingent events and provisioning requirements and all. Similarly, those arising from insurance policy or contracts from policy holders is also not covered by the standard. And if you go further, the similar items are covered in certain other standards. For example, income tax provisions are strictly governed by LKS number 12, income tax standard. Whereas leases are now covered under SLFRS number 16. And also employee benefits covered by LKS number 19 is not touched upon in LKS number 37. Then finally, they say those resulting from executory contracts. What are these executory contracts? It is defined just below scope exclusion. It says executory contracts are contracts under which neither party has performed or both parties have performed to an equal extent. On their obligations. Now take for example two parties enter into a contract and under which each party has their obligations to fulfill. This could be a situation where none of the parties have performed anything on the contract. None of the parties have performed anything on the performed their obligations on the contract. So in a situation like that, the contract can be called off at any time. That is an executory contract. Contract can be cancelled out or called off at any time. That is because both parties have not done anything on the contract. So they just enter into contract, but thereafter they are not fulfilling any of their obligations. Then it's quite possible such contracts can be just terminated with mutual consent, because both parties can agree easily just to terminate the contract because none of them have done anything on the contract. They have not performed any obligations. Or both parties have performed their obligations to an equal extent. So A does something, or to a similar extent B also is doing something. So then both A and B have no regrets once again to call off the contract, because both parties have performed the obligations to an equal extent. Now just imagine that one has done more than the other. Now say take for example, this is a contract between A and B. A and B. Now if A equals, say A has done 0, B has done 0, then this is an executory contract, because none of the parties have done anything or have performed on their obligations. So this is executory contract. Or A has done to a certain extent to what B has done. That again an executory contract, because they can call off. Nobody can complain because both parties have done their jobs to an equal extent, performed their obligations to an equal extent. Just imagine if somebody has done more than the other party. Maybe A has done more than B, or B has done more than A. In these two cases, you cannot just call off the contract that easily. Because now take this example. A has done more than B. So A has spent 1 million, B has spent only 500,000 rupees to perform the obligations. Then A will not allow B to just call off the contract. Then this won't become an executory contract. Then it is a contract to be honored, which in technical terms we call it onerous contract. Onerous contract. I have defined onerous contract just after executory contract. Let me go back to executory contract. Read again. Executory contracts are contracts under which neither party has performed any of its obligations, nor both parties have partially performed their obligations to an equal extent, where the contract is onerous. Here it becomes onerous contract. Except where the contract is onerous, it says. So onerous contracts are not executory. Executory contracts means the contract that can be waived off, that can be called off. That is because either in a situation where both parties have done their jobs to an equal extent, or none of them have performed on their obligations at all. Now, as you come to the definition of onerous contract is a contract in which the unavoidable cost of meeting the obligation exceeds the economic benefit to be received under it. So now look at here. They are talking about obligations and the benefit to be received on a contract. Now say I have done more for B. Since I have done more for B, I have to receive more from B than what I have to give to B. See, in a situation like that, I will not let B to waive off the contract. That is because the contract is now onerous. One party has done more than the other, so that the cost of meeting my obligations are lesser than benefit to be received under the contract. So that's why it says onerous contract is a contract in which the unavoidable cost of meeting the obligation under the contract exceed the economic benefit expected to be received under it. Now just to check on that principle of executory contract and onerous contract. Once again, just to put you in the picture quickly, executory contracts are not bringing any binding obligations for parties to continue with the contract. This can be cancelled out at any time. Whereas onerous contract is a contract where one party has done more than the other party. In this case, A has done more than B. Therefore, A will not allow B to get out of the contract. Here in this case, B has done more than A, in which situation B will not let A to waive off the contract. In both situations, the contract is identified as onerous. Let's come to concept checker number 1, which is in page number 12. Identify whether the circumstances will give rise to an onerous contract in respect of below stated contracts. There are two contracts given to you. You can see as contract A and contract B, and you have to find out whether they can be regarded as an onerous contract. Let us read contract A. An entity has a contract to purchase 10,000 units of gas at 15 rupees per unit, giving a contract price of 150,000. The current market price of a similar contract is 16 rupees per unit, giving a price of 160,000 rupees. So you are in an advantageous situation. Okay? Because you have a contract to purchase 10,000 units of gas at 15 rupees, which comes to a value of 150,000. So your cost of meeting the obligation is only 150,000. Whereas the benefit to be received, the current market price of a similar contract is 60 rupees per unit, giving a price of 160. The gas will be used in generating electricity, and the electricity will be sold at a profit. Now tell me, from the viewpoint of the company which is contracting to purchase gas at this price, all what they have to pay is 150,000. for this contract. But the benefit that they can receive under it is more than 150,000. So then it doesn't conform to the definition of an onerous contract. You know why? Here, from the company A's point of view, or not company A, the entity which is purchasing this gas has obligations to a value lesser than the benefit to be received under it. It will become an onerous contract if the obligation were to exceed the benefit, not the other way around. If the obligations are exceeding the benefit to be received, then it becomes onerous. Now in this case, what is the obligation this entity has? Let me put down in numerical form. You have obligations for 10,000 units at 15 rupees. That is to a value of 150,000. This is your obligation. The benefit to be received, it's at 16 rupees. If you sell gas in the market, you can get 160. If you sell gas in the market, you can get 160. But if you use this gas to generate electricity, you can produce a profit. Profit means 150,000 plus a P, profit. So in either option, in one of these two options, or in both, if you consider these, both options are better than your obligations. So your obligations are not exceeding the benefit. It is the benefit which is exceeding the obligation. Then this is not onerous from your point of view. Which means you can, if you want, you can cancel it out. You can cancel it out. And the counterpart is not going to be claiming anything, and they may probably happily call it off because the benefit is in your court. If you look at contract B, you may write down as an answer for contract A, you can say not onerous, not onerous. Since benefits to be received, since the benefits to be received under the contract, since the benefit to be received under the contract exceeds cost of meeting the obligations, exceeds cost of meeting the obligations. That's why. Now come to contract B. An entity has a contract to purchase 10,000 units of gas at 23 rupees per unit, giving a contract price of 230,000. Now how much your obligation? Cost of meeting this obligation under this contract is 230,000. The contract, the current market price for a similar contract is 16 rupees per unit, giving a price of 160,000. Which means if you are going to sell this gas in the market, you will be able to get a value of only 160,000. So which is the benefit that you can receive under this contract if you decide to sell the gas in the market. The entity does not use the gas in its business, but has a sale contract to us to sell it to a third party at 18 rupees per unit. Now, without selling this gas to the market, without selling this gas to the market, if the entity decides to sell it to a third party, they can sell it at 18 rupees per unit. And they say the entity would have to pay a penalty of 55,000 rupees to exit from this contract. Now we have to discuss few things here. Cost of meeting the obligation, 230,000. If you sell it in the market, it is going to go at 16 rupees, but you are told that he is going to sell it to a third party at a price of 18 rupees per unit. Then at 18 you can get only 180. At 18 you can get only 180,000. So cost of meeting the obligation is now exceeding the benefit to be received under it. So what is the difference? 50,000. So then the contract becomes onerous. But at the end they say another thing. If now knowing this fact very well, now say you have contracted to buy gas at 23 rupees. That means your total obligation value is 230,000. But after having signed this contract, you look at the market. This gas can be sold only for 16 rupees. But you found a buyer who he is prepared to buy it at 18 rupees. Even if you decide to sell it to that third party, you can get only 180,000 rupees. So that is the benefit that you can receive. But you have an obligation to meet up to 230,000. Then one other option that company may have is just to call off. But if you call off, you have to pay a penalty of 55,000. You have a penalty of 55,000. So when you compare, rather than paying the penalty of 55,000 by cancelling this contract, it is better to meet the obligation and get the benefit. To meet the obligation, you have to pay 230,000. To get the benefit, you will get. So when you get the benefit, you will get 180,000. So if you honor both contracts of purchase and of sale, then your loss would be only 50,000, which is lesser than the penalty that you would have to pay, which is 55,000. Therefore, what we can conclude at this point is this contract, from this company's point of view, is an onerous contract. So that the provision should be made for this. The provision should be made for how much? For 50,000. It requires the provision to be brought in for a sum of 50,000. Therefore, you can write down the answer under contract B. This is an onerous contract because this is an onerous contract, because cost of meeting the obligations, cost of meeting the obligations, cost of meeting the obligations within brackets 230,000, 230,000, this one, 230, cost of meeting the obligation exceeds benefit to be received, benefit to be received within brackets 180,000, benefit to be received within brackets 180,000 under this contract. Therefore, a provision would be made, for a sum of 50,000 rupees. A provision would be made for a sum of 50,000 rupees. Next line you can add another sentence. In case the penalty is lesser than 50,000 rupees, penalty means penalty for cancelling both contracts, purchase contract as well as the sales contract, is lesser than 50,000 rupees. A provision should be made for the penalty amount. A provision should be made for the penalty amount. Because the company will always choose the beneficial option to them. Of course, there are other issues we have now of cancelling a contract. There can be reputational problems for the company. Reputational issues can arise because you are cancelling a purchase contract, and on the other hand, you are cancelling a sales contract. So you are cancelling two contracts. The consequential loss in monetary terms is this amount of penalty that you are paying. But say for example the penalty is only 30,000, you have now two things to decide about. Okay, am I to honor my contracts and incur a loss of 50,000, which means I honor my purchase contract, then I pay 230. Then I honor my sales contract, I receive 180. My eventual loss is 50,000. That is one option I have. Second option, I dishonor both contracts. I cancel both contracts. I am not going to purchase, I am not going to sell, but as a consequence, I have to pay a penalty. If it is lesser than 50,000, in this case, of course, they have said 55,000, then you are not going to choose that option. But if the penalty amount happened to be something like less than 50,000, 30,000 rupees, say, for example, so then one might think, okay, I might as well pay the penalty, and then, say, I simply cancel both contracts. Then the financial loss is lesser, I accept it. But at the same time, there are other issues, like as I said, reputational problem. Once you cancel a contract, then it can be basically an issue for your image. The corporate image can be in trouble, or those other consequences can take place. But as you decide which option that the company would take, you must always go by the most beneficial option to the company. So as per that example, if the penalty is 30,000 rupees, then we should click that option. Then I will say simply I am cancelling my contracts, and then I'll pay the penalty and then get out of that trouble. So But as per this original example, since I mentioned the penalty amount is 55,000, which is more than the consequential loss of the contract, which is 50,000, you go by 50,000 and then decide to make the provision for us for 50,000 rupees. So we were coming from the scope exclusions. I said anything arising from executory contracts are not to be covered in this standard, because executory contracts are the ones which can be cancelled out at any time. But if something were to come through onerous contract means cost of meeting the obligation is exceeding the benefit to be received under the contract. So please remember the definition, not only the definition, but the principle behind onerous contracts. Now we'll come to learn about provisions. Even though I use this word a provision to be made in a situation where the contract is onerous, the provision is defined as a liability. Provision is a liability of uncertain timing or amount. Uncertain timing or amount. A few things need to be learned here. First of all, what is a liability? Now, liability is defined there. Is a present obligation of the enterprise arising from past obligating events, the settlement of which is expected to result in outflow of resources embodying economic benefits. Let me go deep into that definition. A liability, they talk about few things. Present obligation. You have a present obligation. And this will result in outflow of resources. Outflow of resources embodying economic benefits. I simply put it as resources. Outflow of resources. Simply what it says is there is a present obligation. You have an obligation at the moment. I'll go into I'll go into detail of it in a while. But what it says is you have an obligation currently. So for you to say that you have an obligation as of now, you would have committed, you would have done something in the past, right? So present obligation arises from past events. You have committed something, you have done something which is now giving rise to an obligation as of now. So there is a present obligation resulting from past event. And just having an obligation alone is not enough. This obligation is going to result in outflow of resources from the company towards the settlement of that obligation. Sometimes you may have the obligation, but you don't have to pay for anything for that. Then what happens? You have a present obligation, but it is not going to result in outflow of resources from the company. Then you don't call it a liability for definition's sake. In balance sheet, what to show? Okay, you have an obligation, but you don't have to pay anything for that. So then can you bring that item as a liability into the balance sheet? No. And if you are going to just name it, but how much of value you are going to put? There's nothing to be paid. You may be thinking like, what kind of liability that or other obligation that can be, where it is not going to result in outflow of resources. Say for example, somebody has challenged you in the courts and you have done a mistake and you accept it in the courts. So you have an obligation, you have done something, the past event is now bringing an obligation to you, but the judge says, okay, you are being pardoned and you don't have to pay for anything. Then there is an obligation, but it is not resulting in outflow of resources. But liability means you have to have both. You should have a present obligation and it should result in outflow of resources from the enterprise on a future day. Take for example, you take a bank loan. What is the past obligating event? Taking a loan. You took a loan a month ago. Now you have an obligation to repay that loan. So you have a present obligation. And this is going to result in outflow of resources embedding economic benefits. The company is going to settle this loan by giving cash. That is resource. Then it's a liability. You take a bank overdraft, it's a liability. You buy goods from supplier on credit. Then what happens? What was the past obligating event that you have committed? You bought goods on credit. You bought goods on credit. That is the obligating event. That is giving you a current obligation. What is the obligation you have now? Settling the supplier. You have an obligation to settle the supplier. If somebody asks, will it result in outflow of resources? Yes, of course. You have to pay in cash or some other kind to the supplier. So now going back to the definition, there is a present obligation which is going to result in outflow of resources from the company. Then it is a liability. Think about all kinds of liabilities that you put down in the balance sheet. Debentures, bank loans, lease creditors, supplier credits, anything. Accruals. Now take for example electricity that you consume last month. This month you get the bill to pay. Then what was the obligating event? You consumed electricity. That was the obligating event, which is now giving rise to a liability for you. Present obligation. Present obligation is settling CEB for the last month consumption of electricity. And will it result in outflow of resources? Yes, of course. You have to pay in cash of some kind to the electricity board. Then electricity payable is a liability. Consultancy charges payable. You receive consultancy service from somebody, then you have an obligation to pay him. That will result in outflow of resources. So think about all payables, accruals, and other liabilities like bank overdraft, short-term loan, long-term loan, debentures, everything. In all cases, you have present obligation that is going to result in outflow of resources embodying economic benefits. Now, having defined what the liability is, now we know what the liability means now. Now, as it comes to provision, what they say? Provision is a liability. Provision is a liability of uncertain timing or amount. Now, how a provision is distinguished from liabilities? They say, it's a beautiful way of saying it. Provision is a liability. They say, first of all, provision is a liability, but it's little different. In what sense? It is of uncertain timing or amount. That means, going back to liability, I said liability is arising out of past obligating event, so that you have a present obligation. Okay. Then it will result in outflow of resources. But when it comes to provision, what they say is, the provisions also should be made only when there is present obligation, not otherwise. Listen to this very carefully. Provision shall be made only when there is a present obligation, very much like liability. But how it is distinguished from liabilities is that you are not too sure about when to pay, and you are not too sure about sometimes how much exactly to be paid. Take for example, you are consuming a service. Say, going back to electricity, I'll put you in the right picture. As of 31st March, when you close your books, that is the last date of the financial year, you wouldn't have received your electricity bill for the month of March. Correct? As of 31st March, you wouldn't have received the electricity bill for the month of March. So when you prepare the accounts for 31st March on the 1st of April morning, early morning, you prepare the accounts for the year ending 31st March. You don't know exactly how much of electricity bill that is going to come to about. Then at that point, you sometimes apply some technique. Maybe you take 11 months bill, you add up all 11 months bill and divide by 11 and then take an average figure. And then you may think in the month of March that will be the amount. So there you come to a figure, you do a best estimate of the electricity charge that would be coming as the bill for the month of March. Then you have a present obligation. You can't deny that. You have consumed electricity in the month of March, no? You have consumed electricity in the month of March, so you are committed to pay now to CB. But only question mark is how much to pay. Still bill has not been received. So since we don't know the amount, you come up with an estimate. Then it is uncertain of the amount. So then you make a provision for electricity bill. But in few days time, by about 10th of April, when the electricity bill comes and when you receive it into your hand, then you know exactly you have provided for 35,000, but now the real bill is 43,000. Now you don't have to go back 35,000 of provision. You take off the provision and put the exact amount of liability. After the balance sheet date also, when you receive some information, evidence, you can go back and then adjust your 31st March accounts, because they are adjusting events. We will be covering that in LKS number 8. Sorry, LKS number 10 later on. So you go to the 10th of April and get the bill and come back and then adjust it to 31st March. Then at that point you are not going to call it a provision anymore, because it's not a provision, because you have an obligation and you know how much to pay. Take for example, another example, income tax. Income tax, the liability, first of all, there's a confusion as to whether we should be calling that as a provision that you make or whether it is a liability. Now let's think about how exactly things happen as it comes to making an entry for income tax. Now as the 31st March, you look at the profit figures. then you prepare your tax computation, right? Because you are not going to pay taxes on the accounting profit, but you prepare a separate tax computation and you arrive at the taxable profit. And for the taxable profit, you apply the tax rate. Then you find out how much of tax amount that comes to. Say we have 5 million rupees of tax, 5.2 million rupees as per our computation. Then we bring that 5.2 million rupees as a charge to the P&L, and where do you credit? Are you going to call it a liability or are you going to call it a provision for taxation? It's a provision for taxation. You know why? The computation was done only from the company's point of view, and it has not been accepted and finalized and concluded by the Inland Revenue Department. That happens pretty much later, because you send it to the Inland Revenue Department, the return of income tax. The deadline is somewhere on 30th of November. So only 30th of November, after you file the income tax return, only the department will have the opportunity to decide whether the amount is correct or not. That also they might take little more time, and then sometimes 3 months, 4 months later they may send a notice to say that no, we are not agreeing with your computation. So go back and then adjust it and then pay the correct amount of tax. So until that happens, the amount that you are providing, amount that you are stating in the accounts is not final and conclusive. Therefore, we can call it very much like as a provision, because it is of uncertain amount. Now take for another example, a gratuity. Now while an employee is working for the company, he will become eligible for the gratuity. Say for example, someone has worked for about 8 years. For anyone to be eligible for gratuity, he or she has to work for minimum of 5 years. After completing of 5 years of experience, you are eligible for a gratuity according to a formula. Half a month salary into the number of years of service that you have completed. So, as of the end of the financial year, as I told you, this person has completed 8 years. But the amount that will be paid is not known, because the gratuity payment will be made only at the time when the employee leaves the company. So as of now, if you ask, when I am going to leave, he will say, no, I have no plan to leave. I may leave in 5 years' time, I may leave in 10 years' time. So we don't know when he will leave and what will be the salary that he would be taking at that time. Then only we can decide how much of liability we have, or rather how much of money we have to pay for him as gratuity. But today we just make a provision only. Why? We have an obligation to pay, because he has already completed more than 5 years. So we have an obligation. The company has an obligation to pay gratuity. There's a present obligation. But we don't know when it will result in the payment. We have to make a payment. It will result in outflow of resources. But we don't know exactly when that outflow of resource is going to take place. In 2 years down the line, or 3 years down the line, or 5 years down the line, we don't know. Then we can say very well, this is a provision that is to be made. We need to make a provision because we have a present obligation, but it is of uncertain timing. So I took examples for both items: uncertain, timing, or amount. Whereas as it comes to liability, there's no such uncertainty. As it comes to the liability, there's no uncertainty. Because if you take bank loan, is there any uncertainty about when to pay and how much to pay? No. We know exactly, okay, over 5 years we have to pay this much, this much, this much, this much. We know exactly how much we will pay. And the timing also. Bank overdraft, trade creditors, we know how much to pay and when to pay. But provisions are made, you have a liability, but you are not exactly sure about when that will result in the payment, for making the payment, or we don't know sometimes exactly how much to pay. Then pay ini. So the liability is defined as a present obligation resulting from past obligating event, which will result in outflow of resources embodying economic benefits. Now let's talk about this present obligation once again. This obligation can be of two types: either legal or constructive. Legal obligation or constructive obligation. As you come to page number 13, you can see at the top, I have introduced or rather described what a legal obligation is and what a constructive obligation is. Now, legal obligation is very simple to trace, very simple to identify. It is stemming out of a law, legally. Take for example, the obligation coming out of a contract is legal, because as you sign a contract, as you sign an agreement, then this is, agreement can be identified as a contract. Obligation coming out of a contract or coming out of an agreement is a legal obligation. Or maybe coming out of legislation. Legislation is passed in the form of act of parliament. The parliament passes acts, and what is coming out of an act. Now, for example, I'll give you an example. Say environment protection law. Say the government has introduced a law for protecting environment, and if a company does something contrary or something against that law, then the company is legally obligated, because they have violated an act of parliament or legislation or some gazetted notice or whatever. In all means, you will have legal obligations. Or by operation of law, the legal obligations can arise. There are certain laws now, say common law, civil laws, and various laws are there, criminal laws, right? If you break a law, then again you are under legal obligations. So legal obligations can come through legislation or contract or operation of law. I have put them down. If you want, you can just write it down under legal obligation. It can arise through contract, legislation, or operation of law. Now come to constructive obligation. Constructive obligation is an obligation that derives from an enterprise's actions, where by an established pattern of past practice, published policies, or a sufficiently specific current statement, the enterprise has indicated the other parties that it will accept certain responsibilities. And also it says, as a result, the enterprise has created a valid expectation on the part of those other parties that it will discharge those responsibilities. So, constructive obligation is not as straightforward as legal obligation. Because legal obligation, I said, it is if you are violating a law, if you are breaking a contract, or if you are breaching an agreement, then it is quite evident. But constructive obligation is not as straightforward as that. They say because of it is arising out of enterprise's actions, where by an established pattern of past practice. I'll take one by one, then you will understand. Say, established pattern of past practice. Now, the practices which has been established in the past by the company. Say, for example, the company had been having the habit of paying bonus whenever they make certain profit targets. Now the bonus payment is an incentive that company management decides. Employees cannot make a demand, or employees cannot go and say that company is liable to pay bonus. Because salary is different. Over time, they all come under employment contract. But bonus doesn't form part of the employment contract. If the management decides that the employee should be given something more, they can name it as a bonus and then give 1 month bonus, 2 month salaries as bonus and things like that. But if the company has established a certain policy, past practice, actually it's more than policy, it's called established pattern of past practice. They have been following this practice. What is this practice I am talking about? Whenever you make 100 million profit or more than 100 million, company has the habit of paying 3-month salary as bonus to employees. Now what is it? If somebody asks, this somebody can call it, this is a practice that the company had been adopting. Well established practice, not just once in a way they decide and pay. Every time they have been doing this. So well established practice which has been running through in the past period. Now, since the company has established a practice like this, they have conveyed this. The company has indicated through their practice that they will accept certain responsibilities. So by establishing a practice of paying 3 months salary as bonus, whenever the company's profit exceeds 100 million, that is the practice that they have been adopting. And they have given some indication to the employees that they will undertake this responsibility. And this has created a valid expectation in the minds of employees. Valid expectation in the minds of employees that company will discharge this responsibility. Now what the company has got at this moment is not a legal obligation but a constructive obligation, because you have given that indication to the employees by way of a practice that you have been adopting, and now employees are genuinely, reasonably believing that this company will pay bonus. On that note, as of 31st March, accountants are inclined to provide the bonus amounts in the accounts. They are providing. But if you ask as of 31st March, if you ask the accountant, has the board decided? Has the chairman decided? Directors? No. Has the board meeting been convened? Nothing. Have they decided about the bonus? Nothing. But then one can ask, okay, on what basis that you are making a provision in the accounts, my dear accountant? He'll say that there had been a practice in the past in this company to pay bonus whenever the profit exceeds so much. So I took that as a established past practice, and this has created a valid expectation in the minds of employees that company will discharge this responsibility, this obligation. Then a provision shall be made because it is a constructive obligation. Then other thing is, it says published policies. I'll take another example for that, published policies. Now company in their promotional materials, in their various brochures, they say that our policy is always not to contaminate, not to pollute the land where we conduct our business. So this has been widely published policies. This is a policy, means you can't hold somebody legally obligated. Please remember, you can't hold somebody legally obligated. Hey, you have written something in your promotional material, now you are doing something else. Yeah, of course someone might try to challenge, but I don't think that one can be legally accused of not following something that they have written as their policy. But if it is a published policy whereby the company has indicated that they will undertake certain responsibilities, the company has indicated that they will undertake certain responsibilities, and which has created valid expectations in the minds of some people. For example, I am going back to the same example. The company has a published policy to say that they never contaminate land where they operate their business. And having published those policies, say in a particular place, in a location where they conduct the business, where the land has got contaminated. So after having published the policy, if they have done contrary, if they have contaminated the land, the company will get, may not be the legal obligation, but the constructive obligation, because they have done something against the published policies. So they have published policies whereby they have indicated that they will undertake certain responsibilities, and also it has created a valid expectation in the minds of the neighboring community. Now the neighboring community can come and say, hey, you guys have said you will never contaminate land in your brochures and in your various policy documents, but now you have done the other way around. So companies should make a provision for eventual losses to bring the land back to the normal condition, to eliminate the contamination, to eliminate the pollution. Whatever the cost that they will have to incur might have to be provided for, not because that there is a legal obligation, but there is a constructive obligation here. And also they say sufficiently specific current statement. This is also something like a policies. They are making statements. For example, in the annual general meeting, the board of directors, the chairman is making a statement. That's why they say sufficiently specific current statement. See the words, sufficiently specific. It's not a vague statement. The vague statements are not specific statements. So, sufficiently specific is good enough to say that it is specific. Sufficiently specific, not a very old statement, but current statement. Because you can't hold on to the chairman who was living about 30 years ago and then he said something. That is not a current statement. So you have to always challenge against the statement made by responsible person in a very specific manner, sufficiently specific manner, which has to be, of course, a current statement. If the company were to do something against or contrary to what the statement they are making, then naturally they will assume or they will have constructive obligation. So once again, the chairman is saying something, but company is doing something else, then thereby you are creating a valid expectation in the minds of people that the company will discharge those responsibilities. Then there is a constructive obligation. Now I can give you a few more examples for constructive obligations. You can write down just below constructive obligations examples. Refunding policy. Refunding policy. They have published policies, or they would have had practices, past practices of refunding customers when the goods are found to be defective, and if they were to be returned within some number of months. They have been having this policy so that the company has constructive obligation. Number one, refunding policy. Refunding policy. Number two, this example that I mentioned, cleaning of land or cleaning of contaminated land. Cleaning of contaminated land. Now, contaminating the land, contaminating the land, if it happened to be a breach of law, say the environmental protection law says you are not permitted to contaminate the land, then still you contaminate, still you pollute, then where you are caught up. Not under constructive obligation, then you are under directly legal obligation. But here I am talking about there is no law as such. But you have gone and told the whole world that you are a company which will never contaminate land. And you have done the contrary. Then you have constructive obligations. I think you are now very clear about what legal obligations are and what constructive obligations are. So what it says is, you have a present obligation resulting from past obligating event. So if you ask what is past obligating event, it is an event that is giving rise to either a legal obligation or constructive obligation to the entity. So you are committing a crime, then you are under obligation, legal obligation. You murder a person, so you are, what is the act? Killing a man. So it's a crime. You will be charged against the criminal prosecution. So you are under legal obligation. If you come to page number 14, What is present obligation? In rare cases, it is not clear whether there is a present obligation. In these cases, a past event is deemed to give rise to a present obligation by taking account of all available evidence. Past event. A past event that leads to a present obligation is called an obligating event. For an event to be an obligating event, it is necessary that the enterprise has no realistic alternative to settling the obligation created by the event. You have no other alternative but settling. Right. Let's come to a very important section, which is in page number 13. Before that, can we quickly finish our concept checker number 2? Concept checker number 2 in page number 13. A company has been in the practice of paying a bonus of 250,000 rupees to each of its employees if its annual profit exceeds 150 million, even though there was no legal requirement for it. The annual report for the annual profit for the year ended 31st March 2019 was 180 million. So they have gone passing 150 million target. So they are asking state with reasons whether a provision is recognized for bonus in the above case. Yes, since there is a constructive obligation. It says since there is a constructive obligation, a provision for bonus shall be made. Provision for bonus shall be made. Right, let's come to that important section in page number 13 at the bottom. Recognition of provisions. Provision must be recognized. We are coming to this part now. Recognition of provisions. A provision should be made or should be recognized only when an enterprise has a present obligation, legal or constructive, as a result of past event. So that is very clear. We have discussed it now. There should be a present obligation. Now let me ask one question at this moment. How about making a provision against a possible obligation? What is a possible obligation? There is a difference between present obligation and possible obligation. Present obligation means you have an obligation right now. But possible obligation means you may get the obligation in the future. Provisions are not supposed to be made against possible obligations, because possible obligations will always be dealt under contingent liabilities, and no provision should be made against contingent liabilities. You should make provisions against the liabilities you have now. Take for example, the company has supplied some goods to customers, and customers have gone to courts for the defect that they have found in the goods that company has supplied. And now there is court case going on. There's court case going on. But the company is taking the position that they are not found to be guilty on this. It was due to some error that had occurred when the goods were in the possession of the customer. That's the argument that company has put forward before the courts. But customers are claiming, no, that is not because of that. It is because of the defect in the product that the company has supplied. While the court case is going on, now say 31st March deadline comes in, accounting deadline. Now you as an accountant, what are you going to do now here? Are you going to suggest a provision in the accounts? Now they say, for example, customer has put a claim for 100 million rupees. So are you going to make a provision for 100 million? This is where you have to go to the technical definition and the technicality contained in the standard. At the very beginning, when I started, I told you the general thinking is for anything that is, if you think that it's going to bounce on you, and in order to be prudent, okay, make a provision. So are you going to make a provision for 100 million rupees for the claim that the customer has put forward while the court case is going on? So if you are going to make a provision, you are simply saying that you have present obligation. No. So in a situation like this, it is difficult to conclude or difficult to decide whether the company has committed the mistake or not. The company is saying, no, they are not at fault. Customer is saying, the company is at fault. Who will decide? Judge. But as of 31st March, you can call a judge and ask a judge, how are you going to decide on this? Case is going on, is being heard. Is being heard. So, you have to seek some expert opinion in this case. Sometimes you have to go by professional judgments, and also, the recommendation given by expertise. In this case, the lawyers. You can ask the lawyer. Even it can be a company lawyer, own lawyer. You can ask. This lawyer need not to be an independent lawyer, but still, company lawyer can advise. If the company lawyer says, no, nothing to be worried, this case the company will win, nothing will have to be paid, then you can take that as the evidence, and based on that, you can simply consider that you have no present obligation. But if the lawyer says the other way around, the lawyer says the company, now look here, it appears that to me, you will be found guilty by the courts for this claim. Then the lawyer says you have a very good chance of finding to be guilty. Then you have to accept that fact, that evidence, and consider as that you have present obligations. But then again, how much to provide for? Then you can ask the next question from the lawyer. Okay, you are saying that we have more chances to lose the case. If we were to lose the case, you think how much we will have to pay? Then again, lawyer can decide. I mean, his judgment. He's also an expert. He said that no, I don't think that judge will ask you to pay 100 million, whatever they have asked for. Maybe 25% of it. Then you make a provision for 25 million. That's it. So there, what I want to differentiate is what is present obligation and what is possible obligation. Now here the good example was that court case. To decide whether it is a present or possible, you sought opinion from the lawyer. But there are certain obligations which are clear-cut possible obligations. They are not present obligations. If they are not present obligations, no provision should be made. Even in that court case, what I am saying is, even though you may have to pay in the future, when you ask from the lawyer is saying, you have done some mistake in the past, which is now giving rise to an obligation. You have a present obligation, just that it is not visible. It is, since it is now being argued in the courts, You can't say that you have a possible obligation. It's quite possible that you have already committed for this obligating event, and that as a result of it, you have present obligations. And the second point, it says, it is probable that an outflow of resources embodying economic benefits will be required to settle the obligation. Now, I would like you to underline this important word, probable. Because since the word probable comes into that, that is why we require a provision. That is why we require a provision. If it is certain, now the difference between the two words, probable and certain. Probable means not 100%, but more than 50%. It is more probable to happen than not. It is more likely to happen than not. That is why we call it a probable. So when you say probable, that means there is some amount of uncertainty. That is why it leads to a provision to be made. Otherwise, it's a liability. You have a present obligation, and if somebody says it will result in outflow of resources, are you sure? 100%. Then it's a liability. Now you say it is probable that it will result in outflow of resources. That is why you got to make a provision. That's why I wanted you to underline this word, the probable, because that word is taking the liability away and put it under provisions. Then the third paragraph in page number 14, it says probable outflow of resources embodying economic benefits. It's worth reading that paragraph. An outflow of resources is regarded as probable if the event is more likely than not to occur. For instance, the probability that the event will occur is greater than the probability that it will not. That means more than 50%. If you have more than 50% probability, that means it is more likely to happen than not happening. Where it is not probable, that a present obligation exists, an enterprise discloses it as a contingent liability. If you think there is a present obligation, but it is not probable that it will result in outflow of resources. For example, now you have fired an employee from the company, and that employee has gone to courts. And now when you seek legal opinion about the status of the case that is going on, the lawyer says most probably you will be found guilty. The company is will found to be guilty, but I don't think that you will have to pay anything. So that means you have a present obligation, but it is not going to result in outflow of resources embodying economic benefits. It will not result in outflow of resources. Or it's not probable. Then just put it as a contingent liability because nothing to be provided. So no provisions can be made if it is not probable. So they say it is probable that it will result in outflow of resources embodying economic benefits to settle the obligations. And the third and the final point to be satisfied to make a provision is that you can make a reliable estimate of the amount of the obligation. Now once again you underline the word or highlight the word reliable estimate. Because there again, the amount may not be 100% confirmed. That is why they say a reliable estimate can be made. If you have a present obligation, If it is going to result in outflow of resources for sure, and if the amount is well known, then it is liability. I am going back to it once again, over and over again. But now what you are trying to say is, you have a present obligation, but it is probable that it will result in outflow of resources. And the amount can be estimated reliably. A reliable estimate. Why you are talking about reliable estimate? Because you don't know, you don't have the confirmed amount. So to make a provision, you should be able to make a reliable estimate. Now, further on that reliable estimate, the last paragraph in page number 14. The use of estimates is an essential part of the preparation of the financial statements and does not undermine their reliability. This is a very important sentence. Some people think that, when you go with the estimates, that will always put down the reliability of the financial information that you are providing. No, it is not the case always. Because in certain instances, making a reliable, making an estimate, using an estimate is not going to undermine the reliability. Even though you don't have the exact number, but you can make best of your effort to make a best estimate. That's what they say. Make an estimate. For example, a gratuity provision, we are making an estimate. So when you make an estimate, it may not be as accurate as the real amount, but it is better to have that estimate and reflecting in the financial statements than not putting anything at all. So going back to it now, what it says is, in order for a provision to be made, 3 conditions have to be satisfied. First one, there should be a present obligation resulting from past obligating event, which is giving rise to a constructive obligation or a legal obligation. Number 2, it is probable that it will result in outflow of resources embodying economic benefits towards settling the obligation. Number 3, a reliable estimate can be made in respect of the obligating amount. With that note, we'll take a break and get back in few minutes. Thank you.